Welcome to the Red and Bold Show. I am one of your hosts, Marc Adams, and I'm joined by my friend Anthony Robertson. What's up, Ant? How's it going?
It's going well. I missed doing the show with you last week, but I went live anyways, and it was a lot of fun. Everyone came through and had some cool comments. But I'm ready to get back to our conversation and get back to the 49ers, because even though we're in the midst of the dry period, there's still 49ers news every single day, it feels, because somebody from another team is speaking up, or one of our players is doing something on social media. There's never a boring day when it comes to 49ers news.
That's true. And, it was always that way back in the day when Jim Harbaugh was the coach. Only then it was different things that were dominating the news, lots of arrests and things like that. But I'm in a different location today, don't have all of the stuff that I normally have. Mainly, I'm missing my light. So I feel like when I'm looking at me, I look like I'm half dead. I am part way dead, but not all the way dead, not half dead. So just part of the way. So bear with me today, and next week maybe I'll look a little bit better. So if you're in the chat with us, jump in here and say hi. See JD's in here, and Jimmy is in here. Thanks for joining us. Jim Everett the Great is in here. That's probably the only time that Jim Everett has actually been associated with great. And he's saying that Rams Nation taking over the NFC West. Kyle blew it. Well, we'll have to see about that. I strongly disagree with Jim Everett the Great. Let's jump in and see what we can talk about. By the way, you can find me at 49ers Camelot, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, or on Twitter/X. You can find Anthony at 49ers Cutback. Same platforms. We both do most all of the ones that you're watching or listening to. So go check us out. Please like, subscribe, do all that stuff. It really, we would appreciate it. Helps us out. So let's jump in. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on Brandon Ayuk, but I did want to address this video where he's saying that the 49ers don't want him. I want to see what your take is, because I think there's no way that the 49ers told Brandon Ayuk, we don't want you. It might be that the way the negotiations are coming together, that he's finding out that what he wants is not what they want to pay. And so he may be taking that as they don't want me, but there's no way. And even Adam Schefter today on some other podcast said the same thing. There's no way the 49ers don't want Brandon Ayuk. I can tell you that they do want him back. So wanted to see what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, it's interesting. You got Ayuk, who last week, I think it was last week or the week before, just came out and said that San Francisco's his home. This is where he wants to be. This is where his family is, and all that stuff. He wants to be here, beyond. And then we get this video, and, whatever you think about the video, whether it was staged or it wasn't, or I think it's just Brandon Ayuk illustrating that he wants to be in San Francisco, but he's obviously not getting the contract offer that he's seeking. And we know that Mike Silver has reported the 49ers want to give him $26 million per year. Well, $26 million per year would make him the number 8th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. And depending on how good you think Brandon Ayuk is, it doesn't seem like it's that far off what his value is around the league. So to me, this is a move where he's wanting to get around $28 million, which is what the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal is once you break it all down. And he's just not there. And so he's working social media. The team is continuing to do things the way they do it, whether they leak subtle information to some media members to get it out there, I don't know. But I think that this is just a part of the negotiations, and can never fault a player for trying to get as much money as they can. And you can't fault a team for trying to stay pat if you're trying to keep a team together that could potentially win a Super Bowl. So I get where both sides are coming. I think initial reactions to social media posts usually get people going. To me, I did go on Patreon and talk about this whole lot, but not a whole lot, maybe like 10, 15 minutes. It's not something that you really want to spend a lot of time on, but this is just the normal thing. We'll get to training camp. We'll see what happens. The 49ers want Brandon Ayuk to be in San Francisco. They want him for sure for 2024. And then beyond that, I'm sure they do, but it's got to make sense for both sides, and they haven't got to where it makes sense for both sides yet.
Yeah, I know fans are getting tired of hearing about Ayuk, but it was the same thing a year ago. We were getting tired of hearing about Nick Bosa. The year before, we were tired of hearing about Deebo Samuel. These things always work out. They may not work out before training camp. They may not work out before everyone reports, but normally within a few days they work out. Now, Bosa, he took his a little farther than what we're used to seeing. What is your best guess on how things go with Ayuk? A, is he going to be there for training camp? B, is he going to be there for training camp with a new contract, or is he going to be there reluctantly, ready to play on that fifth-year option?
I think he will come in at some point. I would guess, just the way the Deebo's contract negotiations work, at some point he'll come in during week 1. I don't know if he'll actually start practicing right away, but at some point he'll come in and he'll be around the facility and around the team. Once they start getting to pads is when the deadline hits, where you really want to get him out there on the field so that way you can see what you got. And just make sure he's back in shape and getting reacclimated to playing football. Because I know you do your workouts on the side, but being a part of the team and going through training camp is just something a little bit different. So I think that is the case that's probably going to happen. I think the 49ers, if they have to, will let him play out his fifth-year option. They'll still have a 6 year of control with a franchise tag. I don't think they're really worried about it. They're going to make Brandon Ayuk budge on this. And I think that they know that, yes, it's only $2 million, whatever it is, whatever that guaranteed money is going to be. But they know that this is going to set the tone for the next 3 years because they've got other commitments that they've got to make, including Brock Purdy. So I expect Brandon Ayuk to be in training camp at some point. My guess is week 2 will be when he starts practicing, whether he has a new deal or not. But I think they all would like to get that new deal done probably the end of that first week, so that way he can start up the way Deebo Samuel did.
Yeah, and Matt Mayoko upset the turnip truck here recently when he started saying, hey, maybe they don't work out a new deal, because we've all been saying it's gonna work out. They're gonna get him a new deal. They want to keep Brandon Ayuk. But now Matt's saying, well, maybe not. And that certainly causes a little bit of angst among 49ers fans, but I still think that in all likelihood they get a deal done. Now, JD asks, will they go with the 2 tight end set more? I'm assuming he's asking if for some reason Ayuk is not in training camp, if he doesn't play much this year, or maybe he's asking that in general.
I do believe they're going to play more 2 tight end sets. I've kind of started floating this around in some of my content that I put it out. I've got a feeling that the 49ers are going to go to more 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and they've ran in a long time. They ran it some last year. I've been going back and watching some of the games from last year, and I've seen 12 personnel with Charlie Warner. The problem was Warner would go out for passes, and they didn't really have to do anything to worry about him in pass routes. But now when you've got Logan Thomas, you've potentially got a guy that can win catching the football. I know it pulls Kyle Juszczyk off the field, but there is a trend here. Last year during the preseason, the Miami Dolphins and Mike McDaniel flirted around with 12 personnel, running it almost 60% of the time. And I think that it's a trend that could change the way some of the personnel groupings defensively play against the 49ers. So I think it could be a new wrinkle. Getting Logan Thomas is very important for that with him and George Kittle. And I don't think it's going to be like a drastic, we're going to see 2 tight ends be the most predominant. But even if it upticks, 5%, I think it could make a big difference on how teams play the 49ers and how the 49ers are able to take advantage of it, not just in the run game, because it adds extra gaps to the line of scrimmage. When you put those 2 tight ends on each side, it just makes it a little bit easier for McCaffrey in some areas. It spreads the defensive players out, but also in the passing game where you can go play action and get those tight ends out against good, favorable matchups against linebackers and safeties.
Yeah, and Kenny mentioned in the chat that Ricky will get more reps. And so, look, if there's one positive thing about having Ayuk not there, it's that those young wide receivers do get more reps. But I'm kind of with Josh here, who said, don't want Ricky getting starting snaps. Yeah, we don't want Ricky Pearsall. We don't want any rookie starting for the 49ers. We want our guys, our regular guys in there. And I think it's going to happen. Maybe, like you said, maybe Ayuk doesn't start practicing till a couple of weeks into training camp. It's not the end of the world. As long as he comes in, he's in shape, he's ready. Hopefully it doesn't affect him. It affected Debo, the whole contract thing. Nick Bosa even said it affected him. So I wouldn't be surprised if it affected Ayuk some, but hopefully it won't be that way. So we agreed that Brandon Ayuk is showing up to training camp. Is Trent Williams going to show up to training camp?
Yeah, I don't think that's even a question. I think he is going to show up. If he really needed a contract done, the way Christian McCaffrey got something done, I think the 49ers would get something done with Trent. Trent Williams in the 49ers front office, since the very first time he stepped foot in Santa Clara with that trade, and they made that deal that changed some of the way his money worked and made him a free agent at the end of the year, and the 49ers wouldn't franchise him. They've showed a lot of trust in each other. And I think that if he really wants a deal right now, they would get it done because they could defer some of his money and actually save money on the cap this season to be able to pay people like Brandon Ayuk and roll money over for Brock Purdy. So I think he's going to be there. I think him showing up to minicamp illustrates that. But him and Kyle Shanahan, him and Chris Foerster, him and John Lynch have just such a tremendous relationship that I think if something needed to get worked out, it would. And he's a consummate professional. I expect him to be in the building and doing the things that he normally does, not practicing a whole lot, but doing what he's supposed to do to get himself ready for the season.
Yeah, there are a few players who, when they say, I want a new contract, you just figure a way to do it. Trent Williams is one of those. Christian McCaffrey is one of those. Brock Purdy is going to be one of those. I don't know if he is yet, but he is going to be. Nick Bosa is one of those. Maybe you can throw Fred Warner in there, but definitely if Trent says, hey, I want some guaranteed money, I think that they'll take care of him. So no worries about Trent, like Josh said. JD asks, will Camelot show up to training camp? I mean, I haven't heard anything of that makes me think that he won't. He's at tight end U. Isn't he at tight end U with George Kittle?
Yeah, I believe I saw that Jennifer Lee Chan had put that out on Twitter that Cameron Latu was there, and that's a good sign. And you know, Latu, he needs a lot of work. Let's be honest. Last year was not his best showing when it came to training camp, but I think a lot of it was mental. I think he was having a hard time adjusting to the 49ers system, and this is something I've heard from a lot of people around the league throughout the years that scout tight ends is the tight end transition is sometimes one of the most difficult to make going from college to the NFL. Just the way that people run their schemes, the motions, all the things that you have to do within the offense is just a lot more complicated than the simple concepts that you're going to get in college. And I think Cameron Latu, because he adjusted to tight end so late in college, was just underwater. And he just struggled with it. And that mental part of the game where he's remembering where to line up, what he's supposed to do pre-snap was affecting him post-snap and him not catching the football. So I'm hoping a year of being in the room, learning the offense, that now he's going to be able to not have those physical problems when he gets to training camp, and we'll see the best version of Cameron Latu. And let's be honest, that's what he has to do if he's going to make this football team, because right now Logan Thomas is ahead of him and Braden Willis is ahead of him and maybe Eric Saubert. We don't know for sure, but Latu's still 6'5", 250 with athleticism. They like the young guy. He's going to get an opportunity, and I hope he ends up showing up and showing out because he's got the most upside of all the other tight ends not named George Kittle.
While we're talking tight ends, JD asks, will they go with 5 tight ends? Kittle, Siebert, Thomas, Willis, that's Braden Willis, and Mason Pline. Maybe they get him on the practice squad. I don't think they're going to keep 5 tight ends.
I don't even think the roster really has them keep 4 tight ends on the active roster this year. They've done that before, but I think you just have so many players at other positions that you want to keep, including probably a 6 wide receiver, that I think now you're going to go 3 tight ends on the active roster, and then you're going to put 1 or 2, depending on who they are on your practice squad. That's where you could see a Mason Pline end up, or even an Eric Saubert, because even though he might land on another team, he's not going to get picked up on waivers because he's a veteran with enough accrued seasons. He gets to choose where he wants to go. So that's what they did with Tyler Kroft when they cut him. They said, hey, we're gonna go ahead and bring you back. Don't go sign anywhere else. And so this is something the 49ers do with veterans. So I think it's going to be 3 tight ends. And that means one of those young guys could go. Maybe they keep 4 if they don't want to lose Latu and Willis. But I think that's going to be tough to do with the construction of the roster the way it is.
Yeah, and I think that'll be a good question for us to ask Matt Mayoko. We had him scheduled for last week. He had a family thing come up and had to cancel. That actually worked out better for me because my week was chaotic with a capital K. C. And so we're going to get Matt on. He's on a trip right now, I think, like a cross-country thing. And so when he gets back from that, we're supposed to get him on here again. So hope that I think that'll be a really good question for him. I know that one of the questions that you have for him is about the roster structure as far as the wide receivers go. So that's going to be interesting to see what he thinks about that, because sometimes they keep 6, sometimes they keep 5. I would think that this would be a season that they would keep 6 because they have some really good ones.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically 8 deep, and that's not including Trent Taylor and what he can add as far as special teams. So that's going to be a tough battle at the end of the depth chart, because the likelihood is they're keeping Cowming as the 5th guy. And then you've got a battle between Danny Gray, Ronnie Bell, and Chris Conley, the veteran, the speedster, and the young guy. It's going to be interesting to see how it works out and what the 49ers end up wanting. But I think special teams could play the biggest role in who they decide is wide receiver 6. And it's crazy that we're talking about wide receiver 6 and how much of a battle it's going to be. You can look around the league, and there's not usually a battle after wide receiver 3. Chicago's got like Dante Pettis. You know what I mean? It's crazy the difference in riches from the depth of the 49ers roster compared to other teams around the league.
Yeah, and you didn't mention Willie Snead. I mean, they could end up bringing him back and sitting Ayuk and Debo because, I'm just kidding. I don't mean to take a shot at Willie. He's a good guy. All right, well, let's move on, because I wanted to ask you about this. The 49ers, I was going to say drafted. They signed defensive lineman Shakel Brown, I think a few weeks ago, and we didn't talk about that, but now we're hearing more things from the team. Chris Kocurek talked about it, that the 49ers a year ago really liked him, and then he ended up signing with the Titans. So I wanted to see what you were thinking, what you thought about the signing of Shakel Brown. The 49ers liked him then. I would assume they liked him now, especially since they brought him in. Do you think that he can make this defensive line rotation, or do you think that he's more of a practice squad type guy?
Well, I think the same way that you have the wide receivers with a bunch of guys like kind of log jammed, I think that's what you got with defensive tackle. I think Kalia Davis is probably the leader in the clubhouse for that 5th defensive tackle spot. He's been a part of the roster, and I thought last year he had moments where you're like, ooh, maybe. But there's not enough of those moments. There's definitely not consistency. So they're still hoping he's going to be the player that they want. But Shakel Brown, Evan Anderson are 2 guys coming in that the 49ers ultimately really like. And Shakel Brown came in for a 30 visit in 2023, and they really wanted him, but he went to Tennessee. So the fact that they got him here means Chris Kocurek has been itching to get his hands on him. And all the reports I heard from what he looked like at minicamp was that he looked very strong and that he looked the part. And I think when you go back and you look at his college film, it's not like it jumps off the screen production-wise, but you see some traits, and you're wondering if you get him in your scheme, if he's going to be able to have the production that you're looking for. And I think with his build being 6'3", 295, and the first step quickness, he does look like a 49ers type defensive tackle, but there's a complete logjam. So I don't know if it's this year that we expect Shakel Brown to make this team. Are they going to beat out Kevin Givens or Kalia Davis? I don't know. And so I think that even though I really like him and I think he's got a shot, I really do think he's got a shot to push Kalia Davis if the 49ers keep 5 defensive tackles. I just don't know because they're super high on Kalia Davis, and everyone kind of saying now that different players remind them of DJ Jones is getting kind of crazy at this point. Chris Kasarik said Jordan Elliott reminds him of DJ Jones. Evan Anderson reminds him of DJ Jones. So they're looking for that guy. It's apparent. And I think Shakel Brown is built that way, but we'll see if it ends up showing up on the field. But I like him a lot. I'm really excited to see him in training camp and during the preseason.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that they at times struggled to stop the run on defense, especially in the postseason. And now they're bringing in guys who they're comparing to DJ Jones. And so whether it's Kalia Davis or Evan Anderson or Shakel Brown, it does seem like they're hoping that one of these guys, and you could probably throw Jordan Elliott in there as well, they're hoping that one of these guys can be that foundational piece of kind of getting back to a good run stuffing defense like they've had in the past. Do you think that this is reactionary, or do you think that they, even if the run defense was really good last year, that they would still be looking for that person?
I think this is something they've been kind of doing since 2019. The 2019 defense, even though it was fantastic against the pass and getting after the quarterback, it gave up 112 yards per game on the ground. And so I think since then they've been looking for those guys. That's why you would see guys like Hassan Ridgeway come in as they were looking for these big physical guys. And then in 2020, them drafting Javon Kinlaw thinking he would be a big run stopper. So I think this has been what they've been doing. It just hasn't quite worked out. And we know that they felt they needed more pass rush help when they brought in Javon Hargrave. And so they kind of flipped the script a little bit there, went back to more of a Buckner-style pass rusher with their starting unit. But they were always expecting guys like Eric Armstead to be able to stop the run and Kinlaw to stop the run. But last year, Kinlaw was not a good run stopper. He was good at getting after the quarterback. And so now they're trying to get back to that mold. Bring in Jordan Elliott. I mean, that was a great move. He's got a 40% win rate, which in run defense, which will put him at 12th amongst defensive tackles around the league. So he's one of the top guys when it comes to stopping the run. And I think that's a motivation for them. And yeah, I think these back end guys, they're looking for that guy, Jordan Elliott. And you look at Kevin Givens and the mold of Kalia Davis and all these guys, they're kind of similar builds, and they're trying to find that guy that ultimately fits and can be the long-term solution, whether it's a part of the rotation or eventually sliding in to the top part of that defense.
What do you think about this defensive line? Do you think that they're going to be, I don't know, I don't really want to ask, are they going to be better than the 2023 defensive line? Do you think they might end up being deeper, though? That's something that we have heard from the 49ers, is that they believe that their defensive line will be deeper than they were a year ago.
I think you have to think that because last year coming into the season, Kerry Hyder was one of your defensive ends, and I like Kerry Hyder, but as far as the guys they got now, like I feel more comfortable with like Yetur Gross-Matos, or even Drake Jackson was a big significant role at the front part of this defensive line, and he's going to be 4-5 as part of the rotation. So I think in that it's easy to see the depth of defensive end has changed. Leonard Floyd is going to be the consummate pro and just stabilize that defensive end opposite of Bosa. And then you've got Gross-Matos that can come in and do the things he does. I think right away, defensive end just feels more deep. You're going to have Robert Beal in year 2. You're going to have Drake Jackson, hopefully better Drake Jackson in year 3. I know he's coming off an injury. So you got to feel like there's more depth there. With defensive tackle, I think it's a little bit more complicated because you lost Eric Armstead and you knew what you were going to consistently get from him. I mean, he played 12 games last year and still had 5 sacks. I mean, the guy just is a real, elite player on the inside. It's just he couldn't stay healthy. So replacing him is difficult. Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, that is good. 2 starters. One started with the Texans, one started with Cleveland. That's really good. That's a better depth than you have from Kinlaw, in my opinion. So you have the same guy in Kevin Givens. I think you might have slipped a little bit when it came to the starting defensive tackle for the San Francisco 49ers. But I think when you look overall at depth, it was upgraded because you got another starter behind. So whether it's Elliott starting or Malik Collins starting, The other guy's been a starter in this league. I think that's great. And then, like my guy Luke Luna said to me yesterday, hey, if someone could beat out Kevin Givens, that means they improved even more. So we just talked about those guys that are right there nipping on his heels. So potentially the San Francisco 49ers could have a deeper defensive line. I just don't know what we're going to get from Malik Collins or Jordan Elliott. Can we get Malik Collins going from 5 sacks to 7.5? That would definitely help everything. So it's going to be interesting, but it could by the end of the year us saying, yeah, that's the deepest defensive line we've had in a while.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They may not have quite the dynamics that they've had before, when you lose a guy like Eric Armstead, but I do agree that they should be deeper. And I think that probably that's going to make them better overall, especially if they're fresher. They'll be able to handle injuries better. So I feel good about the defensive line going forward. Wanted to get into maybe a few players that you think will have a breakout season in 2024, and maybe a few players or a couple of players that you think might regress in 2024. So let's talk, and that's a hard, I know that's a hard one to answer. So let's talk about maybe 2 or 3 players that we think might take a step forward. And when I say breakout season, I'm not talking that all of a sudden they're going to be Pro Bowlers, but just take a noticeable step forward in 2024. Who would you name for that spot?
Well, I think the first one I'm going to bring up is actually a new player to the 49ers, and that's Isaac Yedem. I just think that, he got the 8 starts last year, but no one was really talking about this guy being a big-time corner. But now he's going to come into a situation where he's going to play in the 49ers defense with a very good front 7 and a very good pass rushing defensive line. If you can get to third down situations, he'll obviously be in the game with nickel being on the field. And I just think that with the opportunities that I saw Ambry Thomas have last year, that I think that Isaac Yedem and his 14 pass breakups that he had last season, he can get his hand on the football and potentially get some turnovers. And if he starts getting turnovers, I think this league is going to change their opinion on Isaac Yedem, and he could turn around next year and go cash in on a big contract. I think with his length, his physicality, and just the way he attacks football, I think this guy's going to be a big addition to the 49ers. So I think he could go from being a guy that maybe no one knew who he was around the league to somebody that's getting a lot of attention on the open market next year. I think he could break out and really help the San Francisco 49ers be able to fill that hole that has definitely been there at that third cornerback position where they were going out and getting guys like Logan Ryan and Jason Verrett and just trying to figure this thing out. I think they've got it figured out now.
That's a good one. I thought about naming him as one, but then, there's a couple of young corners that I think might challenge, especially like with Renardo Green, that I don't know, but that's definitely a good one. One of the ones that I named was Jair Brown. We saw him last year. He started playing later in the season. He made some mistakes. He made some splash plays, including a third quarter interception in the Super Bowl. I think that with a year under his belt, I think that he's going to come in. He's going to know what he's doing better. The game's going to slow down to him a little bit. I think that he's going to read things a little better. I think that Jair Brown is going to be noticeably better in 2024.
I think that's a good choice because Jair really had to figure out how to play within the defense. And now he's going to be coming in at first. He's going to be the guy leading the charge when training camp starts. Talanoa Funga's not going to be on the field until week 2, week 3, week 4. We don't know when he's coming back for training camp. So that means Jair Brown is going to be the one leading the charge. And that means George Odom, Malik Mustafa, Taylor Hawkins, they're all going to be taking their cues from him. And I think that he figured out last year the speed of the game. He figured out where he was supposed to be. I expect his tackling to get a little bit better. I think that was a concern for me. He had a 10% missed tackle rate. That's got to go down. But I think he figured a lot of things out. And from the beginning of the season when we saw him get his first snaps until the end where he was playing in the Super Bowl, I thought we've seen a vast improvement. There's still things he needs to learn. He still needs to become the film study that Talanoa Hufanga is. But I think playing along Tashawn Gibson all season last year was very good for him. And I'm curious to see what that relationship is going to be with him and with what they got with Talanoa Hufanga. Another guy that we got to talk about is D. Winters, because after the reports and then the comments by Fred Warner, D. Winters could be slotting himself as a starting linebacker for the 49ers early on in the season with Dre Greenlaw being out. And with his speed and ability to run, his natural instincts, he might have some of the best instincts that I've seen watching film when watching his TCU film. It looked like he was blitzing on plays he wasn't blitzing. He just recognized it, got downhill, and made plays. So if that is going to start translating to his NFL game because now he understands his scheme, D. Winters might take everyone by storm. And it might be not just that it ends up playing significant snaps this year, but steps into that role. And we start talking about him the same way we started talking about Azeez Al-Shaair and Dre Greenlaw when they were coming up as 49ers linebackers. So I'm very curious about D. Winters, and I think he could have a breakout season because I do think he's going to start as a third linebacker for the 49ers.
Yeah, last year I was really in on D. Winters. And then when training camp came along, it seemed like the 49ers were more in on Jalen Graham. I have a friend who is a Purdue University graduate, and he kept telling me, hey, watch out for Jalen Graham. He's going to be the guy. As soon as they give him a chance, you're going to see something. And I just kind of like, yeah. He's a 7th rounder or whatever. And but then you started hearing that the 49ers were playing him inside. They were playing him in the middle some and giving him responsibilities that they normally don't give rookie linebackers in training camp. And so at that point I was encouraged, but then the regular season came and all the way through the postseason, we would see D. Winters play some with the defense, but we didn't see Jalen Graham. So that made me wonder, okay, where are they at? But yeah, you're right. I do think that we've heard some things, Fred Warner being one of those, that it seems like they are high on D. Winters. So that if he could take a big step forward, that would be huge, especially because who knows what Dre Greenlaw is gonna look like when he comes back or when he comes back. I think that he will come back at some point, but we don't know when, and we don't know what he's going to look like. So I think D. Winters in there would be a huge boost for the 49ers.
Yeah, because they've got to hold everything off until Dre Greenlaw gets back. So if you could have D. Winters and Devondre Campbell hold the fort down until Dre gets back, and if they're playing well, and we know Devondre Campbell's got the ability, he's been an all-pro in the NFL, if they can hold it down, well, that means that the 49ers can wait a little bit longer for Dre Greenlaw to get healthy. You don't want to rush someone back from an Achilles injury, so that would be huge for the 49ers. And yes, I heard them talk about the fact that D. Winters actually passed Jalen Graham during the season last year. So that made me think that he understood the defense now and instincts were taking over. And that's why I'm really optimistic about how quickly he's going to acclimate to playing. Now, the question will be, is he will linebacker? Devondre Campbell playing will? Because we know will linebacker plays the most snaps. But D. Winters' skill set, speed, able to run sideline to sideline, all shows he should be the guy that should be eventually able to play that will linebacker role. They might have themselves another star player if he can develop the way that everyone is kind of alluding that he is developing into.
All right, so we've named a few players that we think might take a step forward. Are there any players that you think might take a step back in 2024?
Yeah, I started looking at players, and this was difficult to start thinking about guys who could regress. So I started taking things into account. Either the 49ers brought in guys that were going to make it more difficult for these players to get on the field, or maybe they were dealing with an injury like Jake Brendel. When you're dealing with knee tendonitis, how good are you going to be? I don't know if they can get this thing to not be flared up, but one of the things that Jake Brendel uses to his advantage is his speed and his ability to get to the second level. Those are things that make him the center that he is. If he starts losing that element, then you're in trouble because right now he doesn't do a great job of holding blocks. He gets there and he gets in the way, but he doesn't secure blocks long enough usually. That's his downfall. But now if he can't even get there and get the leverage that he needs to get his body between the man and the ball carrier, or the man in the hole, that might produce some even more trying situations. Plus, he's not good at anchoring when it comes to pass blocking, and I'm worried about him having a lower body injury and being able to do that. So I think that might be a problem for Jake Brendel. I do think they've added extra competition, and John Feliciano might get a real shot at potentially taking on Jake Brendel now that he's in the second year of this offense and understands the scheme. So I think Brendel might be in a little bit of trouble due to injury and opportunity, and might have a little bit of regression. I just hope we get great center play. If Jake Brendel comes out and plays above and beyond what he's ever did, I'll be the most excited person on the face of the earth, because I want to see that from this 49ers offensive line. But it sounds to me like there's a situation here where he could regress.
That's exactly the same answer that I was going to give. I think that if there's somebody that we think that we could see take a step back, it would be Brendel. Thought about, just for the fun of it, saying Brock Purdy, but I don't believe that, especially since he's had a real off season to get better. I think that we'll see a better Brock Purdy in 2024. Interesting. Josh in here said, in the chat, said Jair Brown. So I'm assuming because he posted this after we shifted gears to who's going to regress. I would assume that that's Josh's answer, but I don't think so. I think that Jair Brown's going to be better. I don't think he's going to regress.
I sure hope he's going to be better. We need that safety room to be better. And if the 49ers feel for any reason that Jair Brown might regress, they might need to look on the open market and bring someone in, because we have a very good cornerback group now. The 49ers have invested not just draft capital, but free agent signings to bring guys in to stabilize that. If your back end, and that back end being the safety position, is going to be a little bit of a concern, you need to go make a move. And so I hope that Jair Brown is going to come in and raise his game and have a second year that elevates the entire team. But if they have any inclination that it's going to be a regression, they're going to have to do something, even if that's just bringing back Tashaun Gibson.
Yeah, Kenny said Huff must come back 100% or we're in trouble. I would agree with that. The 49ers need Talanoa Hufanga for sure. Last question. Will the 49ers be better in 2024 than in 2023? We've seen times like, you can go back to the 2011, 2012 seasons. They were better in 2012, even though their record wasn't as good. They were a better team. You can make the case that they're going to be better this season, but have a worse record, just because they were, their record was so good last year. What do you think about that? Are they going to be better, or do you think they've had some losses that maybe they can't overcome?
I think that it's going to be interesting, because I think even though the makeup of this team hasn't really changed a lot, they have had some key additions that I think could really make this team even more dynamic. We talked a little bit about Logan Thomas and that addition as the second tight end. I think them running Logan Thomas in 12 personnel could add an extra dynamic to this offense that we haven't got to see as much. We just haven't had that legitimate threat. I think that was a great addition. And I think they did a lot of things at the cornerback position. I think the questions are, last year we had no concerns about the safety position with Tashaun Gibson and Talanoa Hufanga. Now I think there is. We don't know if Hufanga is going to be healthy. We don't know what's going to happen with Jair Brown, if he's going to take that next step forward. So I think that there are some question marks at that position compared to what we had before. So I think some of the questions have changed from position. Last year was corner. Now it's safety. Defensive line, you're replacing Eric Armstead. I think when all is said and done, this 49ers team has the potential to be better in 2024. Whenever you can bring back 12 of your offensive starters, your offense should be better than it was. Brock Purdy gets another year under his belt, a full offseason. You get the players used to playing with each other within the system, continuity. You would expect it to get a little bit better. They added depth along the offensive line. You added Logan Thomas. To me, it just says that. The question will be injuries. Can the 49ers hold off the injury bug and stay healthy the whole season. If they can, they definitely can be better. So it's a scary thought to say because the 49ers 2023 team was really, really good. So I think that there are a couple questions that have to be answered, but if they're answered in a positive direction, 49ers could not just be better than last year, but maybe the best team that Kyle Shanahan has had in San Francisco. I think last year was the best team that he's had top to bottom. So we'll see.
Either way, we're going to be hoping and praying that the 49ers can make it back to the Super Bowl and then this time finish what they started. That's all that we have for today. Want to do something next week a little bit different, maybe more like a mailbag kind of thing where we take your questions. So if you have questions that you want us to consider for next week for our mailbag session, find me on Twitter at 49ers Camelot, and you can send those to me. You can just do a DM me and find them there, or you can save them and we'll answer them here in the chat next week. But hoping that we can do that. Ant, you have anything else before we take off?
No, that's it. I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, hit us up. Leave the questions so we can get to them next week. And like Mark said, you get them ahead of time, we'll make sure we can squeeze them into the show. But if you want to come in chat, you can do that as well. But I think that'll be a lot of fun. I'm always interested to see what's on people's minds and what they're thinking compared to where we're at. And it's always fun to get the full perspective from 49ers fans.
Yep. It'll be a lot of fun. So join us next week for another episode of the Red and Bold Show. We'll be back next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Everybody have a great rest of your week and stay nice and cool out there. See ya.